Afrexim Bank awards $400,000 grant to Nigeria's Nipri to boost local production of active pharmaceutical ingredients. Federal government directs security agencies to curtail smuggling. Asia Pacific stocks mixed, oil prices jump about 1%, and oil rises after Aramco raises crude selling price. Details of this and more on Business Express on the network service of the NTA, and we're reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I am Musa Abubakar. Now let's bring you up to speed with business development. African Export-Import Bank, Afrexim Bank, has awarded $400,000 in grant funding to the National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development, NIPRI, of Nigeria for the establishment of an active pharmaceutical ingredient plant. The grant represents a significant proportion of the estimated funds required to implement the project. The federal government has directed security and other relevant agencies to strategize and curtail smuggling and illegal importation of rice through land borders. This came to the fore during a discussion between the Minister of Agriculture, Mohammed Mahmoud Abubakar, and Comptroller General of the Nigerian Customs, Hamid Ali, in Abuja. Musa Babaliu reports.
In spite of the fact that the federal government has banned the importation of rice through the country's land borders, smugglers are not relenting in the illegal business. The smugglers, based on the findings of the Nigeria Customs Service, use animals, including donkeys and camels, to move their smuggled items, including arms and ammunition.
Part of that and part of family, those are where these things are coming.
A national task force was therefore constituted, consisting of 1,000 personnel, including customs and civil defense, to track smugglers.
We have gotten
Comptroller General Nigeria Customs Service Hamid Ali says the task force is to carry out tripartite operations between Nigeria, Niger, and Benin Republics.
We have secured an MOU with them that we can pursue smugglers into their own territory. They can also do the same thing.
Rice processors have alleged that there was a plan to smuggle in more than 900,000 tons of rice through one of the neighboring countries.
The ban on the importation of rice through the land border has also enabled preference for Nigerian milled rice to grow significantly. So in view of this, the Federal Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development is very concerned about the increase in smuggling of rice.
In the meantime, Nigeria and Benin Republic are finalizing agreement on rice production, plantation, and processing factories. Nigeria is to assist Benin Republic establish a program similar to the Anchor Borrowers program being implemented through the Central Bank of Nigeria. Musa Baba Aliyu.
Meanwhile, the International Conference of Agriculture and Food is set to train Nigerian youths on skills acquisition with focus on agriculture and other food-based nutrients. The first set of 150 youth to benefit are from Ogoniland. ICAF is a Turkish-based non-governmental organization with focus on economic integration and cooperation, which acts in the field of agriculture, food and sub-industries related.
Prepare them for the future world, prepare them for the modern agricultural implementations, prepare them for agribusiness, prepare them to see everything globally and be ready to serve their people.
We're already building an international trade center that is connected to this program. So we need to develop some youth who are going to come back to implement the project and be training the trainers.
Let's take a trip to the commodities market. Now, in our discussion segment is a conversation on the activities of the exchange group post-demutualization, earlier recorded by Benny Adams with CEO Nigerian Exchange PLC, Temi Popola. As the year gradually winds down, a lot of activities are happening in the Nigerian stock exchange. Temi Popola is the executive officer, Nigerian Exchange Limited, and he joins me to speak on issues around the market operations. Mr. Temi Popola, you're welcome to Business Express.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, some industry players have been calling on the government to scrutinize some of the corporate assets. You recently announced a partnership with the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, talking about the NNPC. Are we seeing a future listing of some of the government-owned corporations like the NNPC on the exchange anytime soon?
Okay, thank you for the question. I think that if we just narrow the discussion to a potential NNPC listing, we might actually be missing what is the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is something that you touched upon, which is really the question around how can we use the capital markets really to then help achieve some of the government objectives. What are these government objectives? How can we increase and optimize financing and funding sources for the government? How can we, for example, improve on the level of employment in the economy and the society at large? And some would argue also, how can we, through capital markets, also drive wealth creation? So I think that if one wears this sort of bigger, wider lens, you can understand how we are trying to, as a market, as an exchange, to situate ourselves in this discourse. So something like the NNPC listing, or a topic like the NNPC listing that you touched on, is really a micro sort of subset of these bodies of discussion. Specifically around the NNPC, the corporation has spoken publicly about a potential listing. They've spoken publicly about a 2-year sort of timeline and a timetable. And really some of the interactions that we've had with them is really along the lines of how we as the exchange, working with our apex regulator, the SEC, how really we can be helpful through the process and to help shape and guide the thinking around the capital market activity.
Okay, what other measures have the exchange put in place to encourage more participation from individuals as well as other corporate organizations?
Okay, so there are a few things that we are doing. One is to really just take a more inward look, an inward view at the exchange, and to ask ourselves really how we can better improve and optimize our service delivery. Now, the first thing there is if you think about what I call our last mile delivery. In other words, how do individuals and retail people interact with the exchange? There are several parts of that process today that can be optimized through technology. And it's a big part of our focus and a big part of the investments that we're making. So we're asking ourselves of some of the problems that have been solved. Where, for example, if you look in the banking sector today, you can, in the space of minutes, gain access to the financial sector. You can, in the space of minutes, go from being unbanked to being banked. Is there a way that we can achieve that in the capital markets as well? Is there a way that on a mobile phone, for example, an individual can start to finish, gain access to some of the securities and products that we have on the exchange? So this is a big part of our focus and a big part of our drive currently. The other bit, of course, is to, as an exchange, take a step back and look really at how capital is being formed now, and really who and what sector is forming capital. You would find very quickly that the technology space and the technology ecosystem is very active. I think globally there is a lot of visibility and attention that we are drawing as a nation around technology. So also as an exchange, we are trying to make sure that our platform is one where capital can be formed by these technology companies. It would involve us taking a look at our rules. It would involve us taking a look really also at our market structure. And we're doing quite a bit of work in that regard. I think that the final point that I'll touch on also is that in light of the corporate restructuring that we've just had as an institution, where the exchange has just gone through a demutualization exercise, it presents us an opportunity to work better with our intermediaries, to work better to optimize our market structure, and to make sure that we are fit for really purpose in this sector going forward. Thank you.
Okay, with all these reforms coming into play, where is the place of retail investment? What are you doing to attract the retail investors?
Okay, thank you very much. I think that the retail investor segment really boils down to what we call three levers. The first lever is really what products and services and what offerings do you have to offer to retail investors? And by that I mean, if I had personally disposable income today, what products exist on the exchange that I can put that money to work on? So we have to really very quickly then, as an institution, figure out what products, what offerings that we can structure and syndicate and put together that attract people to our platform. The second thing, of course, is around financing. Today, the way our structure of our market is that most people who come to do business have to come with all of the funds that they require to invest. So, for example, if you don't have disposable income today, it's very difficult for you to take a bet or place a bet on the markets one way or the other. And that is because there really isn't access to leverage, there really isn't access to margin and to finance. And so we're trying to really work on that as well, to work with financial institutions, to through technology, also work with regulators to manage the potential exposure that is attached to this. The third thing is really what I call marketing. Marketing today, if you're a retail investor or an individual investor, if you're not aware of our service offerings, if you're not aware that the exchange is a place that you can create wealth or an avenue that you can put money to work, you just frankly will not come in there. So there's a whole body of work that we need to do around marketing, around advertising, and just making sure that we're on the consciousness of the investing public. But overall, I think that there is really a unique opportunity for us. If I look today at the what I call the demography of the investing universe on our exchange versus the wider demography of the nation Nigeria, there is a lot of what I call uncaptured investor population there. And some of the things that are spoken to around technology are ways that we hope to be able to bridge that gap.
Okay, now that you're talking about bringing in on board technology to capture more of the uncaptured, I understand that around the corner you have the maiden Nigerian Exchange Limited Capital Market Conference with the theme, the future ready capital market, innovating the Nigeria sustainable recovery. What is the idea behind the selection of this theme, and what would this conference aim at achieving at the end of the day?
Okay, thank you for the question. So, if you go back to some of the themes of what we've discussed so far, one of the things that becomes apparent very quickly is the need for what I call increased dialogue with policymakers. We spoke to some of the challenges that the government has and some of the strategic objectives that the government is looking to solve and to achieve. Many of these, we believe, can be solved through the capital markets. So one of the things that we're trying to do with this event and with this conference is to start to force more of those discussions. Now, we're aware that those discussions really have been had in the past. We're looking to then take things one step further to try to arrive at what are actionable steps and actionable concrete actions that could be taken. And on that basis, we're really looking to attract the very highest hierarchy and echelons of decision makers in the nation across both the public sector and the private sector. The other thing that we're trying to do, of course, you spoke about retail earlier. I spoke about the need for increased marketing, the need for increased consciousness of the capital markets to investors. It's one of the things that we think that this conference will do. just an opportunity to elevate the discourse around capital markets in Nigeria. It's sort of a bit of an opportunity for financial literacy as well, an event like this. We think that's important. And then thirdly and finally is the fact that if you look at the capital markets today, one of the reasons that the exchange, the former Nigeria Stock Exchange, went through the demutualization exercise, this corporate restructuring that we've just done, is because we think also there is a need for more ownership of the Nigerian capital markets. We think that the new structure that we have, where we have separated the regulatory responsibility of the old exchange into a separate company, and we now have the core exchange that's more commercial in nature. One of the things that we're looking to achieve with that is really for the exchange to be able to take more of a leadership stance, more of a leadership position, and really driving the capital markets in Nigeria, bringing this to the consciousness of all the relevant stakeholders, and just making sure that the capital markets itself can take its rightful place, which is this place where it can help really just for nation growth, nation building, wealth creation all around.
Well, with all these issues in perspective and with a new structure that the exchange has taken, which this conference also intends to look at it in depthly, can you let us into some of the topics to be discussed aside what you've mentioned so far?
Okay, thank you very much. Let me start first by just maybe giving you some background as to where we are today. The Vice President will be the headline speaker at this conference. We've gotten his confirmation. We do have the number 3 citizen and the Speaker of the House of Representatives also, who's going to be gracing the event. We have several ministers, including the Minister for Finance, for example, who have confirmed participation. Quite a few state governors, the governors of Kaduna State, Edo State, Ekiti State, Niger State, and frankly, a lot of these sort of captains of industry, as we like to call them, are people that we're expecting at the event. There are 3 strategic themes that we'll be looking really to discuss and to drive. One is the role of the capital markets in really helping the government to drive its own goals and strategic ambitions. The second is the role of the capital markets for helping the private sector also to drive its strategic ambitions and objectives. And then the third really is really to just explore how the policymakers and how the government really can help to drive the capital markets itself, because as we will look to discuss, the capital markets remain a very strategic corner piece of some of the levers that we think that the government has. So it's really these sort of 3 things that we're looking to explore during the conference.
Well, like you've mentioned, a lot has been happening in the capital market, particularly from the beginning of the year to this point, talking about the demutualization. Can you let us into some of the listings and some of the new changes that are taking place as the exchange gets into better shape?
Okay. Thank you very much. There's quite a lot of what I would call exciting things happening. And the way to think about the restructuring that has happened at the exchange is that, the sum of the individual parts of the new entity will be bigger than the whole. We now have a parent company, which is NGX Group PLC, that owns 3 subsidiaries. One of those subsidiaries is the core operating exchange, NGX. The other 2 is an NGX regulation. I spoke about that earlier, where I said that we've separated the business of regulation from the core exchange. And then the third operating company is NGX Real Estate. So really, if you look at these first 2 companies, the core exchange and the regulation part of it, it was one entity in the old structure. But I think that now with this sort of break of parts, what it does is that it frees up the core exchange to be a lot more commercial without necessarily crossing any sort of boundaries around best practices. What we've tried to do is to make sure that we can adhere to the strictest of governance standards with this new structure, while at the same time being able to be commercial in our nature and in our ethos. And this structure presents that perfectly. So with that, I think that what you would find is a lot more flexibility, a lot more agility, a lot more, call it, partnerships that you'd be finding us form with, whether they're listed corporates, whether they're policymakers in government, similar to some of the events that we're looking to do, which should overall translate, we hope, into more listings, into a deeper capital markets, and into really bringing into the fold of investing a new generation of Nigerians.
Well, I've been speaking with the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Exchange Limited, Temi Pupola. Thank you so very much for sharing your thoughts with us at this particular point in time.
And as the new week begins, stock began the week on steroids following stronger sentiments that pushed stocks higher by almost 3% at the close of the day's session. The all-share index added 2.93% to end at 43,246.87 points. Equity capitalization also rose to 22.569 trillion naira. Volume of trade was 443.6 million. Next is Global Market Report.
Hello and welcome to the Global Market Review. This week, investors are looking ahead to fresh inflation readings in the United States. The Producer Price Index and Consumer Price Index slated for release on Tuesday and Wednesday. Stock futures rose in early trading Monday. Futures on the Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 0.19% at 68 points. S&P 500 also appreciated 0.03%, while Nasdaq Composite dipped 0.11%. European stocks were flat in early trade. DAX was 0.15% low at 16,032.31. FTSE 100 at marginally low, while CAC 40 top 0.10%. Shares in Asia were mixed on Monday as investors reacted to China's trade data released over the weekend. Mainland Chinese stocks recovered from earlier losses to close higher, with the Shanghai Composite topping 0.20% at 3,498.63, while the Hang Seng Index dipped 0.43% across 24,763.77, and the Nikkei also depreciated 0.35% to close 29,507.05. For African markets, it was a slow start for South Africa's JSE Africa Top 40, Namibia's overall index, and Tunisia's Tunidex. That's the Global Market Review. I am Boss Sede Able.
Well, that's it. Business Express returns Tuesday by 9:30 a.m. I am Musa Abubakar. Thanks for watching.